You know, every society tells a story about what it's afraid of. And some, well, they build those fears right into stone. Today, we're going to dive into what those stones, our prisons, really truly say about us. Let's just start with this powerful idea because it's at the absolute heart of everything. The idea that punishment, it isn't really a sign of strength. It's actually a sign of a limitation. It's what we resort to when our understanding just runs out. So, okay, if that's true, then a prison isn't just some building we put criminals in. It's a mirror. It's literally the physical architecture of a culture's beliefs, its blind spots, and all the things it just can't quite wrap its head around at any given point in time. And that brings us to this core concept, the human ledger. Try to think of it not as a history of buildings with bars on the windows, but as a history of ideas. It's like a running record of our evolving theories about people, our deepest fears, and, maybe, our growing capacity for empathy. To really get a handle on the walls we have now, we've got to go way back. Back to a time before them. See, the earliest forms of punishment weren't about locking people up at all. Nope, they were about something much more basic, sheer survival. And this is where you see a huge difference in the logic. Exile wasn't about getting revenge. It was a survival strategy. The group was pretty much saying, look, we just can't stay stable with you here. It was this devastating but, practical act of removal, a totally different world from our modern focus on getting back at someone for breaking a law. And this right here, this gets to the heart of their whole mindset. The pain, the public spectacle, it wasn't just random cruelty for cruelty's sake. These were seen as necessary rituals, almost like ceremonies, to wipe away a moral stain and bring things back into balance so the whole group could feel safe again. So what we see in this early behavior is a pattern that just keeps repeating itself all through history. When a society runs up against a problem it doesn't understand, what's its first instinct? Often it's to build a wall and hide the problem behind it. And this quote, man, it's like the theme song for this whole story. It's the logic that connects the medieval dungeon to the asylum to the modern prison we see today. When understanding fails, containment just becomes the go-to solution. And you can trace this evolution so clearly, right? In the medieval era, the big fear was for the soul, so we built dungeons. Then the Industrial Revolution comes along, and suddenly we're terrified of poverty, so we build workhouses. And as psychology starts to emerge, we fear the messy complexities of the human mind, so we build asylums. The fear changes, but the solution, that wall, it pretty much stays the same. All right, so this whole historical pattern, it leads us right to our own doorstep, to the present day, and the crisis of mass incarceration. We've basically inherited all these past fears, and they've all come together in a system that is, at its very core, just warehousing unhealed trauma on an industrial scale. And here is the central, impossible conflict of the modern prison. We ask it to do three completely incompatible things all at the same time. It's supposed to punish someone, protect the rest of us, and rehabilitate that person. But seriously, how can an institution designed for punishment also be a place of healing? It's just a setup for failure. The result is that the modern prison has become a trauma amplifier. Research shows that people who are incarcerated are up to 10 times more likely to have experienced complex trauma than the general population. The system takes all this unaddressed pain and puts it in an environment where it's not just ignored, it's concentrated and magnified. So all of this, it forces us to ask a really different and maybe a much more important question. We've spent centuries getting really good at reacting and punishing. But what if we shifted our focus? What if we aimed to stop the harm before it ever happens? And that question right there, it blows the door wide open to this huge paradigm shift that's already starting to happen all around the world. It's a move away from a justice system built on fear and punishment and toward one that's actually built on healing and prevention. At its core, this whole shift is about changing the one fundamental question we ask. For centuries, the question has always been, who is dangerous? The breakthroughs we're seeing today, they're driven by a totally different one. What broke here, in this person, in this community, and can it be healed? So what happens when you start asking that new question? Well, all these new pathways open up. First, you get the Scandinavian models, which focus on dignity and normalization, basically treating people like future neighbors. Second, you have restorative justice, which is all about reframing accountability as repairing harm, not just getting revenge. And third, you see public health models that prevent harm by treating the root causes, like, say, tackling food deserts or lead exposure in a neighborhood. And listen, if you take away one thing, let it be this. These new approaches, they aren't just some feel-good, idealistic dream. They are evidence-based. It turns out that dignity, compassion, and healing are actually more effective tools for creating safer societies than punishment ever was. So let's leave it here with this final thought to chew on. A justice system isn't just a bunch of buildings and laws. It's a mirror, for sure, reflecting who we are right now. But maybe more importantly, it's a blueprint for who we hope to become.